Hello, hello, hello. I'm Andrea Stevens,
And I'm Jeanette Mejias, and we are Web's Women.
where exposure brings strength. Alrighty. I will not say hello, episode 92.
Which you
You know
just
what?
did.
I know. I
Dear friend, mine, a mentor, an incredible woman that I love and who's dear to my heart, Barbara Klein, which I refer to her as Barb. And for those of you who are listening, Barb has been on our podcast the first year when we launched. Powerful woman, and she's just been incredible. And so just a little bit about Barb for those who are not familiar with her. Barb Klein is the author of 111 Invitations, excellent book, by the way. Step into the full richness of life, and the founder of Inspired Possibility. Barb is a certified recovery coach, life coach, invitation to change group facilitator, meditation instruction, retreat leader, and writer. Barb also is a mom to two young men, one of whom struggle with substance use disorder, eating disorder, and other mental health challenges. Barb has been trained in craft, motivational interviewing, invitation to change, and Tai Chi for recovery, seeking to find meaningful and positive ways to support people. As a mom who has navigated life through her son's substance use and eating disorders for 14 years, she's determined to create something positive and meaningful out of this experience. She supports other family members who have been impacted by a child's mental health challenges and people in recovery to make their own well-being a priority and to find peace and possibility beyond the pain. She's committed to bringing more love and compassion to the journey with substance use, eating disorder, and other mental health challenges. She's currently working on her second book, One Moment at a Time, which will support families to find peace and joy while loving their child, no matter what path their child's life takes. And I have to tell you, this is, we are in the month of Mental Health Awareness Month, and that is near and dear to our hearts. And I'm really think there's no one better than bringing my dear friend Barb to close out the month, especially in the month of mental health awareness, than this incredible woman here. So Barb, warmest welcome.
Thank you.
So good to have you here, girl.
Thank you. So good to be with you both.
Yes.
welcome, welcome again.
Yeah.
We missed you, Barb.
Yeah.
We
It's been a
missed
couple
you.
years.
It's been a while. Yeah.
But you're here.
I'm here.
You're here. You're here. You're here.
And we're happy that you're here with us.
Yes.
Thank you.
So,
I don't know
Barb,
where you want me to begin. Go ahead.
I know, but we want you to, maybe, starting from, since we've spoken to you, what's gone on in the last few years to lead you to where you are probably today. Maybe that's where you can,
If I can remember. Yeah. So we talked in February 2021, I think, where I was just finishing up my certification for recovery coaching and really shifted more towards supporting families around recovery. And then I did become trained in the invitation to change approach, which I absolutely love. And it just felt like this revolutionary approach that is the opposite of tough love, that is grounded in evidence-based practices that work. And that changed for sure my relationship with my son as he continued to struggle with substance use and mental health things, eating disorder, because it just opens the door to a compassionate understanding of what's going on for him. And it's a wheel approach, so it's not a linear thing with particular steps, and they're all interwoven. but it begins with helping with understanding.
Mm.
And of course, everybody comes to this program like, but what do I do? I want to fix things. I want to change things, and it's like,
Yeah.
no, we don't get there. We start with helping with understanding, we go to helping with awareness, and then we get to the helping with action, with the idea that in the middle of this circle is practice, 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 that you will be imperfect as you muddle through these new ideas and these new ways. But the first idea is that behaviors make sense.
Mm.
And if you're thinking of someone who struggles with substance use, that's not usually the first thing that a family thinks. The first thing a family thinks is, why don't you just stop? You can see what
Right.
this is doing to you. You can see what this is doing to us. What's wrong with you?
Mm-hmm.
There's a
Mm.
moral failing, blah, blah, blah. But and I never believed that, but I didn't have a model that
Right.
supported my heart and my
Mm.
values. And so the cultural messaging is very strong on tough love and look, you got to let them hit rock bottom and they've got to want it. And if they don't want it, they're not going to heal. And
You're
it's,
right, Barb, because it's a culture that's created of you just gotta let them swim, drown.
and the problem is
Yeah.
that these days, far too often rock bottom is death.
Yeah.
Mm.
And families are doing, I mean, my son was homeless for a period of time because we truly felt that we had done everything we could do, because we didn't know any other way. We didn't know how to build a relationship. We didn't know how to create an environment of trust and safety where he could work with us, where we could collaborate towards recovery. I wish I had known this 20 years ago. I think our lives would have gone very differently. But even so, I'm going to say this just made things better for the last couple of years with him. Um, Behaviors make sense. Then the next piece is one size doesn't fit all. So you learn that there's many paths to recovery. I've learned about harm reduction, which is not everybody's going to go for complete abstinence. Some people are going to find moderation is their path, or
Mm-hmm.
they need medication assisted treatment, or maybe smoking weed is the way for them that keeps them off of more serious things. So it definitely challenged my way of thinking,
Mm-hmm.
but it's also so much more compassionate and accepting of the fact that people are going to use substances. So how can we be with them? How can we walk alongside them?
Mm.
And the third piece of that is ambivalence is normal. And that's another thing that we in the past would tend to look at somebody and go, well, he says he wants help, but then he does this thing. So he doesn't really want it. But when you come to understand, anybody making any big change in their life is going to be ambivalent about it, right? They're going to want to make the change and they're going to not want to make the change.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So it just takes away, it softens you around your loved one, is what I found. Softened my heart to him.
Wow.
Um, Opened the compassion, the empathy, the understanding of what must it be like for him. Because
Mm.
nobody would choose to have an eating disorder. Nobody would choose to have a substance use disorder.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody would choose to hurt their family and their friends. It just doesn't, it's not a choice.
Yes.
Um,
Right.
and then the helping with awareness piece really starts with self-awareness. So getting to know yourself, getting to know your values, getting to know your limits.
Mm.
We'll talk about boundaries, but it's like boundaries for me have always been very fluid because they change in the moment. But this
Mm.
kind of gives you permission to go, okay, here's what I can do, here's what I can't do today. Tomorrow it might be different. I might have more bandwidth, I might have more energy. So it opened up that awareness. It opened up connection to my values. So if my value is love and my value is my relationship with my son, then
Mm.
that becomes more important than just stopping the behavior.
Mm-hmm.
And understanding that these are behaviors, these are symptoms, these are not the real issue necessarily. And so often we just focus on the drug use or the eating disorder. And we're often telling people things that they already know. They could read you the book on what they need to do differently, but you
Mm-hmm.
need to be with the person to get more deeply into their heart and their
Mm.
soul and their life experience so that you can really come alongside them and go, wow, you know, this must be hard for you, that this is what you're finding to cope. And that's what I really believe it has been for him. Then there's a piece about willingness, and willingness speaks to, because I have this great love for you, the other side of that coin is great pain. there's going to be great pain
Mhm.
with loving somebody so deeply.
Yeah.
And as I will reveal in a minute, I think I'm living the ultimate willingness right now.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a piece around self-compassion. So it's all about having that kindness for yourself for what you didn't know in the past, that you've done the best you can do, because we don't really benefit anybody when we spend a lot of time beating ourselves up.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
coming with gentleness to ourselves, again, just kind of deepens the possibility for relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And then finally, we get to the part about helping with action. And that's where we teach some communication skills, which begin with listening, just simply listening to somebody and the power of that. So I really feel like for the first time, I was able to hear my son, and he was able to feel seen, heard, respected, loved, and understood in a different way. I mean, there were things he had been telling me for 13 years that I just kind of kept shutting down, pushing away. And it was like, you've been telling me this for this long. Maybe it's time that I actually listen to you. And
Mhm.
and the whole idea is that the person using or you struggling with the eating disorder, they're the ones who have to drive their recovery. Yes,
Mm-hmm.
but you can support them. But when we stop telling and yelling and reacting from our fear, which is really what it is. We're terrified that we're going to lose these people, so we get angry
Mhm.
and we start screaming at them and telling them what they have to do, and that never works. Rarely works. So it's much better when you can kind of say, "Well, what do you think would work for you? What do you want to try? What have you tried before that didn't work? Why? What was that like for you?" And I think it takes a lot of courage to actually be able to listen and hear somebody say, inpatient doesn't work for me because XYZ. And instead of just going, oh, yeah, there's another excuse, you're just saying
Mm-hmm.
that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not until then that you'd get to the point of like learning how to ask open ended questions and give space for listening. You learn how to reinforce the behaviors that you want to see more of. You respond differently if somebody's interacting with you in a way that feels good versus it's problematic for you. And I think the other thing it freed me up from was not being a detective anymore and trying to figure out, is he using, is he not using? Because that didn't really matter anymore. What mattered was I want to be with my son. I
Mm.
want to love him as he is, which I think I said on our last show, just love
Yeah,
him as he
Mhm.
is for as long as he's here.
I
Mhm.
remember that. Yes.
Yeah.
It's not my job to save his life because I can't do that.
Mm.
It's my job to love him while he's here.
Mm.
And, over the past year, um, he was, he was incarcerated in 2020 and
Mhm.
he was in prison from 2020 till May of last year, 2022. And then he was released to a psychiatric center, which was great at the time because it was setting him up with a foundation for
Yeah.
support around his mental health needs.
Mhm.
And he hadn't ever lived on his own independently.
Mm.
So he really needed a lot of support. And then he was discharged in September to quote unquote supportive housing um, that didn't have nearly enough support,
Mm.
unfortunately.
Yeah.
And over 6 months, um, we watched him get progressively sicker with both the eating disorder and then eventually the substance use came back in.
Mm.
And I don't know, since November, December, we really felt like these are going to be the last months of his life. It looked like we were watching him die. And I talked with his recovery coach, and he said, I feel like we're watching him die, and we're the only ones who know it.
Mm.
He was hospitalized 9 times between December and March for the eating disorder. Um, I watched him advocate for more help. I mean, he got himself back to the hospital one weekend, and medically he didn't need to stay there, but he talked to the team and he said, "No, I want to stay here until Monday till I can talk to a peer advocate, till I can talk to the addiction specialist."
Wow.
And yet, there's that piece around autonomy with adults, and he was discharged and allowed to go back out, and without the follow-up to make sure that he really went to the outpatient appointments that were set, that should have been more and more and more. And he did lose his life on March 29th. So it's been 8 weeks now. Um,
Mm.
we don't know the official cause of death. I guess what I say is his body and his spirit just couldn't go on anymore. And, every time he was in the hospital with the eating disorder, we were told, certainly all of it was involved and all of it was, and I don't think he had to die, but he did. And so that's what we're dealing with now, and that's what we're learning to live with. I won't say moving through or beyond, because I don't believe that happens. But it's learning to live without him, and
Yeah.
it's learning to come to things like this because there are pieces of my work that feel really important. One of it being the idea of getting the invitation to change out to families.
Mhm.
I would hate for any family to lose a child without having had the opportunity to have a loving relationship with them. I can't imagine the regret that we would have had we not been connected in the way that we
Right.
were, so that we can say without doubt, he knows how loved he was and is,
Mhm.
and we know how much he loved us. So
Yeah.
that felt really important. And the other thing that felt really important, because I've canceled most of my work. There's a couple things that I felt really
Of
strongly about
course.
saying yes to, and this was one of them. Um, because the other thing that I have found is that the practices and the things that I have cultivated over the years really have mattered in holding me and carrying me through this time.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So that's part of what I want to talk with you about tonight, is just what are those things that people can be doing now
Yeah.
for any reason. And I said, I always said that these things would help you no matter what happened with your child. It's not about the outcome, as it can't be about the outcome. You can't. You can. I mean, people do, but I think when you measure your parenting success based on the outcome of your child's life, you're setting yourself up for something that's really out of your control, because they are their own beings with their own journey that we may or may not understand, and we have ours. And so
Mhm.
I know for sure one of the things that I learned over these 14 years was that it was important for me and my husband and my other son, to also live our lives, to love Nate with all our hearts, to do what we could to support him, but also not to put life on hold.
Mm.
And people have commented to me now, because we've been getting back to live music and getting out to some concerts. And, I just was with some friends last weekend and I said, I don't think I'm pretending. I think I'm actually enjoying myself, and then in the next minute
Mhm.
I can be grieving. It's
Right.
all there. And I think,
And I think that's all
Mhm.
a process too, Barb,
right, right.
moving along. And I love like what you said when we got on before we actually hit the record button, how you were doing. And you said, I'm doing good today.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Because I love how you say every day is a different day. And I love that about you because you embrace, in those moments. But, you're one of the things I love about you, Barb, but I always have is your transparency
Mhm.
and how you're able to, even in your own times of emotional hardships, challenges, you still give,
Mhm.
and it touches my heart
Mhm.
just, even having you here today, given everything that you've
Mhm.
and your family have endured. So thank you.
Mhm.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And I think, like my meditation practice, the mindfulness teaches us to not be at war with reality. So it
Mhm.
teaches us
Mhm.
to accept what's here. He
Mhm.
teaches us to turn towards life instead of away from it. And so I do think that's the other thing is I'm not avoiding my grief. I am
Yeah.
embracing it. I don't know. I mean, I've experienced all different kinds of grief, and I'm finding that this is very different than any other grief I've ever had before, even losing parents and close friends. And um, but I'm showing up for it, and I know that that's part of the way through, right? And this
Absolutely.
idea of cultivating a heart that can hold it all. I know, Jeanette, you've heard me talk about this over the years.
Yeah.
It's again, this is this ultimate embodiment of that, so that yes, the joy and the pain can be there side
Yeah.
by side. The devastation and the fierceness to live and to make meaning out of this. I mean, my commitment to making our journey and his life and his death matter is fierce. I like there's no way this isn't going to create something. And yes, before we got on, we were talking about my son was a prolific writer. He was an incredible rap artist. I don't know a lot about the genre, but the people who do always told him he was really, really good. And
Wow.
I have pages and pages and pages and pages of papers and notes that he wrote that I think could take me 20 years to read, and then this really intricate art. And I have been given the mission by him that it is my job to read his writing, to make sense of it, to bring it out to the world because it's part of his legacy. And he always wanted to get his music recorded and get it out to the world.
Mm.
And he did do that in these 6 months. And that's, the other piece is like, I don't
Wow.
know, did he do what he was here to do? Was he done? He was only 29, but in those 6 months, what was most important to him was recording his music, writing and recording. And he got to do an open mic, and he's
Mm.
got a SoundCloud channel. And it's raw, rough stuff to listen to because it's about substance use.
Okay.
Mm.
But I think it's going to help a lot of people.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
What? Yeah. And what an honor for you to bring his talent to light, really.
Yeah.
Ugh.
And I think the guy who did the recordings is going to help me because Nate had planned to release an album in April. And
Mm.
I don't really know what that means, but I think I'm going to see if this guy can help us get it onto SoundCloud. Or no, it's on SoundCloud. We want to see if we can get it on Spotify, so that more people can find it. And yeah,
Yeah.
he's and his writing is intense. He wrote a rap for a friend who had died, and I watched him rap this to a friend of mine, and it was like probably 4 minutes long, and he doesn't have any hook or repetition in it. It's just all.
Mm.
And I don't even know how he can memorize one, much less multiple ones, but I barely breathed just listening to him do this. It's
Mm.
just that intense. And I have a picture of her just leaning into him, listening as he's pouring his heart out through his music. So it's pretty beautiful.
Wow.
Yeah. And to have all that to hold on to, I
Yep.
think.
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah. I know. It's heavy.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
But it's beautiful at the same time, and
Yes.
that's appropriate to say, but like,
Yeah,
I just
it
love
is.
the
Thank
way
you.
I love the way you're honoring him. I think that's great.
Thank you. And I think that's what every parent who's lost a child wants, is to be able to talk about their kid and for people to ask about their kids.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
know people don't always know what to say, or they'll say there are no words, and I'm like, you're right, there aren't.
Yeah.
Right.
Or I
Right.
can't imagine, and I'm like, no, you can't, and I hope you don't have to.
Yes.
It's okay. um yeah. So
So tell me, Barb, you mentioned quite a bit about, you know, cultivating practices. And I think that's just so important, just to get through, to your point, to the day, right?
mhm,
Hmm.
mhm.
And I know you've been extremely consistent since the time you and I have met, and that was, I think, over 10 years ago.
Mhm.
And I applaud you because consistency with you that's constant.
Mm.
How do I know that, like, what are some of the things that you do, or what tips can you offer that can help someone who's listening in who would
Yep.
like to, kind of be like, wow, I'd like to see how I can
Yep.
kind of implement practices like that.
Sure. Yeah, and I'm only consistent with things because they work. Because if it
Right.
was strictly a discipline thing
Yeah.
for the sake of
Yeah.
discipline, that would not
Right.
happen.
Right. Right.
Let's just be clear about that.
Yeah.
So I have been doing morning pages for over 9 years now, which is in the morning, 3 notebook-sized pages of stream of consciousness writing, and I continue to do that, and I think that really helps me process whatever's there
Mhm.
when I wake up, because I do it before anything else. It just I use it too as a way to gather thoughts for like a retreat if I'm planning that or something. So I'll have notes around the margin. I'll have things that are starred. I'll have things that will probably go into the book and stuff like that. And, I will say I've been, well, that's a sidetrack, but I have been working on the book that I had been working on even before Nate died, which is called One Moment at a Time. And I do think there's going to be a fifth section to it now, which is continuing for families who need it, and so I'm trying to catch that in real time, and my morning pages helps me with that. It helps me to see where I am. um, and I like just the pages can hold what other people can't, so it's a place where you can get out anything that's on your heart, so that has continued to serve me. I have been practicing gratitude, I believe, for 12 years now on a daily basis. And I've
Mhm.
added in this finding beauty. So every day on Facebook, pretty much, I missed a few days after Nate died, but other than that, I'm pretty much posting my gratitude for the day. And it just gives me a time to pause and reflect on the day, find those things that I'm grateful for, which are sometimes the tears or, the friend who was there for me. It doesn't have to be grand or fancy or anything, but just taking that time to look for the things you're grateful for, I always say it has changed my experience of life. It has not changed my life experiences, but it changes my relationship to it. So when you're looking for things to be grateful for genuinely and you feel it, it shifts the brain's pathways and finding beauty. I think Cheryl Strayed is the one who talks about her mom, or she would have like these beauty emergencies where I think it was her and her kids. I don't know. Somebody did this. I think I'm getting the wrong person, so I apologize. Um, but the idea being, somebody notices when there's a beautiful sunset and you put everything down and you go look at it.
Mhm.
Um, Getting out into nature is always a balm for my soul. So, just taking a walk and taking the time to slow down and notice the beauty and pause, I guess, is always one of my self-care things, which is just slowing down enough to feel what's real and
Mhm.
again being honest about what's going on. um, the idea of acceptance, and not acceptance in terms of this is okay, I love this is great, but acceptance of my limitations. I think the self-awareness of knowing, what do I need today, where am I, learning how to ask for help. Thank goodness. I guess that's the other reason I want to talk about it. I don't think I would have been able to learn these things in the trenches in this moment, but
Mm.
because I've learned them over the years, it's been a lot easier to be able to be really clear with people about what I need and want. And yes, please, now I would love you to set up a meal train for me. We need food. To tell my sister, yes, I really want you to come into town, and as opposed to in the past where I might have been like, well, I know that's a lot for you and only if it works for you. And now I'm like, nope, this is what I
Mhm.
need. You can fly to this town, or this town any time of day, and I will get you. And she thanked me, she's like, that made it so much easier for me to know what to do. And so I do think, I mean, support has been huge. I could not have made it through this time. It's a lonely journey as it is, and the further we get away from the date of his death, the more and more people drop away.
Yeah.
So the other thing I would have told friends early on who said, "What can I do?" I said, "Don't disappear." Because I know these first couple of weeks we're going to get lots of cards and texts and calls and flowers, and I need the
Mhm.
person who's going to remember that the 29th is always a tough day for me. I need the person
Yeah.
who knows I need a card in 6 weeks, So those friends have continued to show up. And yeah, I sure don't want to make it look like this is a solo effort. But I've also got all my professional support people, my massage therapist and my counselor, and partnering well. My husband and I have done a really good job over all of these years with everything that we've dealt with, from school advocacy way back in the to mental health advocacy, and I will say that actually when there's different styles of there as a couple is tricky, um, but it's been important. What else? I do have notes because I got to keep myself on track a little bit.
Yeah, no,
Mhm.
great.
um, what did I say? Well, and this idea of one moment at a time,
Mhm.
the idea that even a day holds way too much in it, right? And it can
Yeah.
change.
And
But
Barb
learning to
too,
go ahead.
you online, I mean, I've seen some of your posts, on Facebook. I probably not all of them every day, but I've seen them. And the day, you express day to day your changes, right? And I know even when I first saw all your posts after your son's death, I thought to myself, this woman is the strongest woman I think I've ever seen or heard.
Mm,
I mean, I couldn't believe the expression.
mm,
And you can hear your acceptance. You can hear your feelings, your emotions. Like you can hear it in your writing.
mm.
And I didn't read your first book. I mean, I'm going to, but I didn't. I have a stack of books that, trust me, I've opened and read one
Hear ya.
chapter, and then I'm like, I'm going to finish this, and then it sits there and collects dust for a year and a half, and it
No
still
worries.
sits there. So, but
I'm
I would.
telling you, do
I'm
the
terrible.
audio.
I'm
Barb's
terrible.
voice is so calming. I have it. I play it.
Maybe the audio will do me
Guys,
well.
the
Well,
audio
Maybe
is
the audio,
fantastic.
and the
but
other
I did.
bonus with the audio
Mhm.
is at the end of that book, I recorded my son's poem to me of "I Have Always Loved You" as a
Really? I'm
bonus
not there
poem.
yet.
Oh,
Oh my God, I can't.
Yeah, I knew I needed to put that in there as a legacy move, and yeah, so
wow.
that's the only place you can get that.
Oh,
Oh my God. I'm so excited.
huh.
Yeah, yeah.
Huh. Well, I'm telling
Sorry,
you
Andrea,
back.
we
No, no,
interrupted.
no, no,
Yeah,
no,
no,
no.
no.
I just have to say that watching, it's like, it was almost like I was listening to you go through all of
Mm,
your emotions and the roller coaster of emotions. It's just the ups and downs, the day to day. The few that I did see, right? It was, I got tears reading
mm,
what you're going, what your thoughts are, what you're going through, even on your happy days.
mm,
I thought, wow,
yeah.
I want to be Barb when I grow up. I want to
Well,
be
thank
Barb.
you. Yeah, and I
Because,
didn't I didn't set out to do that. I didn't plan to do that. I'm not trying to be any kind of way, because people say you're so strong, you're so inspiring. I'm like, I'm not.
but you're
I'm giving
you.
I am giving my heart a
And
voice, and it helps
you,
me.
Mhm.
And part of what I want to do for sure is to normalize death, normalize grief, and bring, break the stigma and shame
hmm
around that,
yeah,
because, and especially these kinds of deaths, lots of times families won't talk about it, if there's a
right.
mental health thing or a substance
Yep.
use thing or a suicide. um, they just don't feel that they can, and they need to still. So
Yeah.
for
And
sure
I
that's
think a
part
lot of
of my
times
mission as
you're
well.
right, though, because parents, they feel as though they're going to be judged.
Sure.
So they don't want to expose anything, right? And then when you hold it all in, it's worse
Right.
And
in
I
the
Or
think
their
end.
or their kid will be judged, I mean, and
Or
we've
yeah,
we've been pretty fierce about that. Like, we know that Nate is so much more than any one thing about him. So,
Mhm. Yeah.
it's, yes, he happened to have these challenges, but he was also an amazing human being with a huge heart. And, I'm just hearing
Mhm.
all the impact that he had on so many people, and bringing
Yeah.
all of that forward is important to me.
Yeah. And he's a rapper. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I can't wait to listen. He's a rapper. Who knew?
Well, prepare yourself, because some of them are like, I
Uh,
actually was listening with, I had lunch with two of my close friends, one who lost her son 2 years ago, the day that we were having our private funeral home viewing, and we had lunch beforehand, and sitting there with my two girlfriends, and we're like, well, let's listen to one of his raps. And so we just picked one that we thought sounded like it might be good. It was rather sexually explicit, and my friend was like, really, Nate, you knew we were going to be listening, really? That's what you had to say? And then she's saying, she's like, he's so precise with his pronunciation, and you can hear every word, unfortunately. And we're like, yeah. So actually, while we were at the funeral home, we had a couple of his friends come, and one of his friends has recorded some music with him too. And I just said, is there something that maybe is a little less sexually explicit that you could play for us? He's like, right here, right now. And I said, yeah, I think Nate would love that. And he did. And
oh,
so it was me and,
Oh,
three of my
oh,
girlfriends listening to him. And
oh.
I went up to the casket afterwards, and I'm like, you love that we just did that, don't you? He was like, oh yeah, I'm delighted. I can't believe it, but I love it.
Aw,
So you honor them for who
that's
they
great.
are. But
yeah.
yeah, writing definitely helps me process. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what I would do without it. I guess it definitely gives me a place to not bottle it all up. And
Yeah. I mean,
it's
I
a,
know you've assisted me in the past when I've been part of your amazing groups that you would
mm,
have your offerings with our Soul Sisters group. And I have to say the writing prompting, there's something to that. I mean,
yeah.
writing your thoughts on paper. I remember you saying that many years back, and um one of the first retreats I went to, and I know I want you to talk a little bit about that
Mm,
too.
hmm.
But it does open up a lot, and you get to take a look kind of inside yourself, I find. So
Yeah, it takes you
Mhm.
beneath the surface of your mind and what you think you know.
yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And when you go back and read what you
Yeah.
wrote,
Yeah.
days, months, years later,
Yeah.
you know, and I started a habit of texting myself because I'll just think of something as I'm driving, and then
Hmm.
I'll talk to text quick because I'm afraid I'm going to forget because I forget
Hmm.
everything.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
But
brilliant.
yeah, I
Go
mean,
back
and
and read your own wisdom, because it's like that came from you.
yeah,
It's more valuable than anything you'll read from anybody else.
yeah. And then I write things down and I burn them because I want them to be away from my mind.
Hmm.
So I do that a lot
That
too.
that works too.
I do that a lot too. But the
Hmm.
writing is important. I do think it is.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the other thing I'd say is the mindfulness practice. I mean, I have probably only meditated once or twice since Nate died, but
Mhm.
having done it for so many years has cultivated, like, I think you do these things over time and you do begin to embody them. They become part of who you are in the world. And so I feel like I still have that mindful way of being in life. Um, where I am with true about what's going on, true with myself, honest with myself, and true with others. So that all came from there.
And it's grounding, right? It grounds you as well, and so when things that unexpected things occur, whether, you know, things that you don't anticipate and people can't understand, how are you still standing? I think it's true, it holds true to those practices. To your point, you said earlier, that's what's kept me. is
Mhm.
sustaining these practices. And I think that's so important, especially, for parents who perhaps are walking the journey, having a child who's struggling with substance abuse, and they're at their wits' end, knowing that they can cultivate some practices. And I loved what you shared and what you've learned in your recent experience where you finally listened. I thought that was just so powerful because
Mm.
here you're thinking you were, and I think you opened something up really. It gives a lot to think about, for
Yeah.
sure.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And
that
that
opening your
different
heart
approach. Yeah, opening the heart. Yeah.
and walking alongside instead of
Mm,
thinking you're the expert,
Mhm.
even in your child's life. Like your child knows a lot about what they need and about what works for them, what doesn't work for them. And, especially when it's an adult child.
Mhm.
And I was clear that I wanted to shift that relationship from like, I don't want to be just the mom anymore who has to figure everything out. Like I want you to know me as a person and I want to know you as a person. And
Mhm.
that's a shift.
Yeah. If there are families out there, moms, dads, that want to connect with you or get help,
Mhm.
what would be, what is your suggestion for them, whether how you can help them or what they can do to kind of learn from you,
Well, I would,
from at this point?
yeah. Um, I'm not really working with anybody in the moment,
Mhm.
just because I'm on a hiatus. But
Mhm. Mhm.
on my website, which is inspiredpossibility.com, there's a resource page and it has a ton of resources. And so I would say the Center for Motivation and Change, which is
Mhm.
cmcffc.org. That's where the invitation to change is. They have a ton of free resources. Um, Helping Families Help also has resources and they list connections to other groups that are out there. There's a lot of free meetings that people can go to. Um, and I think, on my page, I list all these different resources. So I'm not going to try to remember them all now, but that would be the place I would tell anybody to start. Um,
Mhm.
Read the book Beyond Addiction, the Beyond Addiction workbook,
Mhm.
because they just opened my mind to a new way of thinking. And I knew about those books for years. It was like you, Andrea, like I'm like, maybe I should actually buy the book. Well, then I finally bought the book and I'm like, maybe I should actually read it. and it took years before. I still haven't finished reading it, to be honest with you, but I got the ideas and yeah, it just felt like that's what had been looking for. And
Mm.
it's a little known secret, it's like this is not what's presented to families in treatment centers or Al-Anon. It's very different. So just finding that there's better ways that actually work is important. And there are family recovery coaches out there that I had actually just hired one like the day before Nate died because I knew that if we were going to continue with this challenging,
Mhm.
unsustainable way we were interacting and living, like I was going to need somebody to talk to. So it doesn't matter how much you know, sometimes just having somebody else to bounce things around with and get some
absolutely.
support is important. Yeah, and find the ways to live your life and to take care of yourself, get to know what matters to you as a person. Extract yourself enough so that you can remember who you are beyond this role of mom or dad or
Mm,
which can be hard, but like what is actually fun for you? What is actually relaxing for you? Who do you want to connect with? Who don't you want to connect with? Like I guess that's the beauty of this phase of our life is we have like zero tolerance for anything trivial or BS.
Mm.
Like
Yeah.
that's right.
it's just super clear. Like you
Yeah.
do what really matters, and everything else, yeah, we don't have any interest in it or time for it.
That's right.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah,
So, Barb, tell us about your upcoming retreat in the summer.
I will. Yeah, that
I'm
wasn't that.
so excited about that. I am fully. I could say now really fully registered.
Yes, you are. Yay. Yeah, so July 20th to the 23rd at Light on the Hill, which is near Ithaca, New York. It's called Come Home to Yourself, and it's fascinating because when we were in chaos in February and March, I had hardly anyone registered, and I didn't know if I was even going to be able to run it. I was thinking I was going to have to cancel it, and then interestingly, the week that he died, all of a sudden these registrations started rolling in. So it just became clear to me, like, oh yes, this is a part of your work that you have to do. And I do those retreats 4 times like this in people's lives. So it's 4 days of beautiful nature space. We will meditate. We will do writing prompts. We will have silence. We will have time to share with each other or not. Um, it's several hundred acres of gorgeous land. They have a labyrinth. They have a meditation sanctuary. They cook for us with love. I mean, it's just a time to come and be nurtured and held, and to pause, to step away from life's busyness so that you can really connect with yourself. Whether you've been on retreat or you're not, haven't been before, they're all different. Uh-oh, I think I froze.
Yeah, I think,
Okay.
yeah,
All right.
we
Yep.
got you.
You just froze for a sec.
Yeah, but
Okay.
we got you.
You
You're
you guys
still
both froze.
Mhm.
So anyway, it's lovely. And I think this retreat is going to be different than anything I've ever done before, because I am different than I've ever been before. So I can't actually tell you all the magic
It's-
that will be there.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
And I think we have one spot left. So I mean, it's
Okay.
not a ton of openings, but there is one space left for somebody who feels called to come and share that circle with us. It's a nice intimate group too. There's a
Yeah.
22 participant
Mm.
And I
maximum.
will say
Yeah.
for anyone who's listening and are called to go to the retreat, I will say this. Everything, Barb creates a safe space. Everything's confidential. Nothing leaves there. You could be who you are. You don't have to pretend, just come as you are and just embrace, what's there for you and what you will discover. So I'm
Thank you.
excited. I'm looking forward to it. I wish it was July 20th tomorrow. So
I know. I'm not ready, but other than that, I wish it was too.
Mm.
No, it'll be great.
I
And
will.
yeah, one woman was reflecting to me recently so beautifully. She said it was as if you handed me a book, and the
Mm,
title of the book was "This Is Her Name." And she said, and over the weekend, you just turned the pages for me and you just showed me who I was. And I remembered. And she said, I came in such a mess and I left there feeling so strong and so connected to myself. And I took that book home with me and I was like, oh, that's beautiful. Thank you. That's exactly what I want to create.
It's remarkable. It really is. And this will be my third time, but I have to tell you, each retreat I've come out of it differently. I've received differently, and and to your point, Barb, you definitely come differently too. And so that's what it's about. And I'm just excited and I'm thankful that you always answer the calling to your heart. So thank you.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
So
Oh, you want to?
any
Yeah,
closing thoughts? Want to close out with a reading? I would love that.
I do.
Mhm. Yes.
And this one is called My Greatest Teachers.
Hmm.
Thank you to my greatest teachers, those who caused me to look deeply at myself, to become more than I was, to show up to life differently. Those who challenged me in a heartbreaking way, allowing me to learn life-changing lessons through pain and discomfort. Lessons I did not want to know, but had to learn so that I can remember who I am. Times I did not want to go through. Feelings I did not want to have taught me to surrender and let go of that which is not mine. I've learned to step back and allow you your lessons as we both journey on our divergent paths. I've done the best I can, and maybe missteps aren't that at all. Maybe each step was just one step closer, another nugget, another lesson, another gift, simply disguised in ugly wrapping.
That.
Oh gosh, I'm crying.
Perfect.
Yep.
Jeanette knows I love to make people cry.
Oh, yeah,
Because it
that
touches your
hit.
heart.
That hit me.
That is
Mm.
profound. I can't think of a better way of closing our podcast. Thank you, Barb, for being
Thank you, Barb.
to us, for letting us in, for being who you are, for sharing your light to the world, even in the times that they're dark. You always really cast a message of hope. And thank you. Thank you for showing up the way you did tonight.
Thank you for
Yes.
that. Appreciate hearing that reflection.
Yeah.
Yeah. So remember, everyone, you're listening to Web Swimming,
Where exposure brings strength.